In this panel, we're going to focus very specifically on strategies for social innovation. Robert Moses gave us a powerful sense of the weight of history and the momentum of history and how difficult it is to change systems and cultures and when they have literally centuries of tradition behind them. We have 4 social entrepreneurs here, 4 Purpose Prize winners who have all figured out how to change systems, how to change the way people think in their communities, and these are deeply entrenched systems. And we're talking about the foster care systems, or the fact that people in the United States don't have enough food and have to rely on food banks, or the health conditions of African American women, or the truth and reconciliation needs that we have because of what we have inherited from the past. So each of the speakers is going to go for just 7 minutes, and then we're going to have a conversation. So we'll start with Gary. Gary Maxworthy worked for more than 3 decades in the food distribution business before starting his encore career at the San Francisco Food Bank, where he has utterly transformed it. He created the Farm to Family program in 2000 and won a Purpose Prize in 2007.
Thank you. I'd like to tell you a story about human needs, dignity, and nutrition for our most vulnerable citizens. Food for families in need, but not any food. Not McDonald's type carbs, salty snacks, or soda, but fresh fruits and vegetables. A program that came about through necessity. A program that is based on collaboration between potentially competing nonprofits throughout California. A business model that relies heavily on volunteers and each participating organization's ability to fundraise and build infrastructure to support the distribution of fresh fruits and vegetables to over 500,000 families, seniors, and individuals every single week. January 1st, 2000, Farm to Family had not distributed 1 pound. 10 years later, in 2010, we would distribute over 100 million pounds. Partner with over 120 produce packers and growers. All of this produce is then given at no cost to those receiving. In the 90s, food manufacturers and retailers looked closely at their infrastructure as large superstores, people like Walmart, squeezed every penny out of the supply chain, and they forced the industry to do the same thing. The results for food banks was the need was not growing, but the volume of donations, the need was growing, but the volume of donations was not keeping up. Absolutely, the thing that I am most personally proud of is to be part of creating an atmosphere of cooperation. Oops. I came to food banks as a Vista volunteer in '94 after 30 plus years. More recently, I'd been president of Bromar, the largest food broker in the West at that time. I saw the need, and within a couple of years, we'd formed a semi-cooperative group of 11 food banks in Northern Cal. Civic Adventures asked me to elaborate a little bit on this. Food banks believed that food solicitation was a zero-sum game. In other words, another food bank received a truckload of donated food. They didn't. So logically, they didn't. And I knew that by working together, we could bring in more for all. Coming from the food industry obviously helped my credibility. I worked with a group of 3 food banks initially. With some small success, others wanted to join. These were all good people, but I have to say self-interest was the driver in making this program what it is today. We hired a single food resourcer to solicit for all, cooperating with each food bank's own food solicitation. It was key for when we began soliciting produce. We had a history of sharing and trust. Today, some food banks bring in 15 truckloads or more a week, but initially, no one could bring in more than a few pallets, and so we had to share. The first opportunity came when a packer in Fresno offered weekly truckloads of stone fruit, that's peaches, plums, and nectarines during a 3-month period. And it's just about the most fragile fruit, and they had to be in the hands of the needy families food banks served with 1 week from the moment it was picked. Our model made it happen. The first year we distributed around 500,000 pounds of fruit. For the first 5 years, all logistics and finances were managed out of the San Francisco Food Bank. By 2005, we hit 10 million pounds and needed to take the program to a new level. So we put the program under an umbrella organization called the California Association of Food Banks. For me personally, as we took the program statewide, I gave up participation in everyday decisions. I continued to work with the program as much as before, but with focus on strategy and food resource management. Just in 2010, participating food banks will have raised over $6 million to pay for the cost of product and transportation. We have 6 independent contractors, each living and working in key produce-rich areas in California. 5 of the 6 are working on their encore careers and all have a background in produce. We distribute to 40 food banks throughout the state, who in turn distribute through 5,000 plus nonprofit pantries in churches, senior centers, schools. Our biggest challenge has been funding. As I say before, all product is given to the people we serve at no cost. We will get almost 20 million pounds donated for the remaining 80 million pounds we pay for miscellaneous costs associated with totes, bins, handling. Just pennies a pound, but combined with the cost of transportation, it makes it difficult for many food banks to participate fully. An example, key crops such as apples, oranges, cabbage, onions, and potatoes cost us from 4 to 6 cents a pound, a fantastic price compared to what you pay in a supermarket, but still a stretch for food banks. We've set a goal of doubling our volume to 200 million pounds in 5 years. Much of this growth will come from shipping to food banks around the country. It's no exaggeration to say that this program has changed the way that food banks do business. Now, for many food banks, all the product distributed, over 50% is fresh fruits and vegetables. For some, over 60%. The mantra is nutrition, nutrition, and nutrition. My personal goal is to help develop the program to that 200 million pounds. My personal next big thing is all about kids, to grow a program that we have started that provides cut and wrap fruit and vegetables like carrot sticks for school snacks and lunch programs. Thank you.
Gary also told me that for the first time in his life, he's achieved the right balance between the joy he gets from his work and from his family. So that's a good. So Joyce Johnson, along with her husband, the Reverend Nelson Johnson, and others, established the Truth and Community Reconciliation Project in Greensboro, North Carolina in 2001. She and Nelson were awarded the Purpose Prize in 2008, and she's now director of the Jubilee Institute, a community-based leadership development and training group. So Joyce, please share with us. And Joyce, by the way, there's also told me that there's another Nelson in the family, a grandson who's...
That's our new grandson who's 18 months old. And thanks for having us. I bring greetings to you on behalf of my husband of over 40 years, who's here with me, as well as members of the Beloved Community Center and the Faith Community Church where he pastors, and I'm hoping this comes up. Can you see it? I'm looking at it. Let's see. Okay.
There you go.
Okay. All right. So that was 30 of my seconds there, I'm sure.
We'll give you back that.
Thank you. But we've come today to update you on our efforts to move our city toward economic justice and social justice. And it's from a place on November 3rd, 1979, when 5 community and labor organizers were shot and killed, while 10 others were wounded by Klan and Nazis during a legally called demonstration for equality and justice. Those killed represented the best, okay, this is moving by itself. If I could get some technical assistance, I'm not moving, it's moving by itself. But those killed represented some of the best and brightest in our country. Sandy Neely Smith, who had been the student body president at Bennett College for Women in Greensboro. Michael Nathan and Jim Waller, who were medical doctors, who had graduated from Duke University. Cesar Carce, who was a Latino American, also a graduate of Duke University. Yeah. And I don't know what it's doing. It's not doing what I told it to do. But that's the way these things happen. This is one of our barrier points here, but we're going to keep on moving. Okay, all right. So, but anyway, we will get to those pictures, and I worked hard on these pictures to give you some sense of this long journey that is continuing. And then the final person, Bill Sampson, who was a graduate of the Harvard Divinity School. So despite our personal pains, we knew that we had to turn this tragedy into a triumph for all justice-loving people so that our friends would not have died in vain. But we had to figure out how to do this. Even as we continued our efforts day to day to pursue quality education for our children, decent, affordable housing, justice in the courts and criminal justice system, and yes, the single-payer health care for all. So we met, we went to court, we marched, we prayed, we cried, we met some more, we marched some more, and prayed some more. However, we found that the chill from the murders of these community activists still blew very cold. So we came to see that reconciliation in our community was necessary to allow us to move forward to a higher place of humanity in Greensboro. It was not about retributive justice. It was about repairing and healing. But how do you do that? We tried a lot of things over the years. As Southerners, we realized that we lived in a region of our country that still remains unhealed from the American Civil War. So we had to heal ourselves, and in the process, we had to heal our community. We had to turn this tragedy into a triumph for all people of goodwill in our town. We looked to our friends from around the world, especially South Africa and Peru, for models of how to move forward. The Archbishop Desmond Tutu and his fellow TRC members even visited us several times. They pretty much adopted us to help assist us with this process. And finally, in 2001, we launched the first truth and community reconciliation project of its kind in the United States. By facing our past, we hope to gain a better future. And we did this with no money, no governmental support, and actually a lot of governmental opposition, but with a will to do, and with the understanding that if we didn't do it, we were not going to make the progress of our dreams of the 1960s. In 2004, before a crowd of over 500, we installed the first commission, and they deliberated for 2 years. As the process unfolded, we still marched, met, built new partnerships and alliances, prayed, and underwent the painful yet liberating process of publicly telling our story for the first time before large crowds of our neighbors and offering forgiveness to those who had harmed us. They learned that our story was their story, and we learned that their story was our story. The healing, really rooted in truth, was underway. And I'm going to take a little bit more than 2 minutes, given what I've had to deal with. The Greensboro Truth and Community Reconciliation Commission met for the 2 years, produced this 529-page report with 29 concrete recommendations for restorative justice in May of 2006. I wish I could say it was a trek down Primrose Lane. It's been difficult. We haven't been able just to sing Kumbaya, but we are making progress. We're focusing on two particular recommendations in an area of education where there's been quite a bit of progress made, and on trying to implement a genuine citizens' police review to guarantee police accountability and professionalism. And I'll end with just a story on that. During the course of our work, we found ourselves in some interesting places, meeting with new people we've never met with before. One of the pictures would have shown a young gang leader meeting with us, sitting with Nelson, who had come forth and said he heard about us and was inspired to really make peace with other gangs. So we worked with him. Soon after that, then Latino and African American police officers who had run down some of the gang members said they needed help. So we would meet in the same room with these folks we had never met with before. And then on October 1st of this year, 37 residents from Greensboro got on a bus and traveled to the U.S. Justice Department, where we were received by 14 members of the Department of Justice, representing several divisions. And on that bus, there was a microcosm of Greensboro. There were 10 African American and white clergy persons, both Christian and Muslim. There were youth from local colleges, members of the Latino street group, officers who've been fired or were suspended because they refused to do some of the negative things, university professors, community activists. We were young and old. Some of us were economically comfortable. Some of us were worried about paying the rent when we got back from the bus trip. But we were all there together, black, white, and brown. Magic happened on that bus, on the entire trip. We all became united in a quest for a better city. We are still working toward it. The Department of Justice has now come to Greensboro several times. The last time was just this past Thursday. And this past Thursday represented 31 years since we buried our 5 friends. So this work is ongoing. We're still meeting, praying, marching when we have to. A few people even had to get arrested during the course of civil disobedience, but it's attracted people from all over the world. And we think this is a new path for us in our country and around the world of reconciling, facing our past, acknowledging it, and really figuring out how to work together, but in the name of truth and justice, not just to sing kumbaya to one another. One of our most rewarding things is that hundreds of young people are being drawn to this. And there were many pictures of them as they come to sit at our feet, the old folk, to find out a new way to really build up a better world here in this country that we all call ours, and beyond this world, for the entire world and the universe. So we thank you for this opportunity to share with you the power of truth and the call for reconciliation, healing, and restoration. We're all connected ultimately. And thanks for the opportunity, and may God bless all of you.
Thank you, Joyce. Thank you, Joyce. Gail Porter, who's standing up here, and Marilyn Gaston, who is in the front row, both accomplished health professionals, partnered up in 2003 to launch Primetime Sister Circle.
That's not part of the show.
To launch Primetime Sister Circle, a course on exercise, nutrition, and stress, and a part support group to change how African American women approach their own health and the health of their families and communities. In 2006, they won the Purpose Prize. Gail also mentioned to me that before, when I asked her if there was a personal dimension to this work that had sort of strengthened in recent years, she mentioned that she had had some losses in her own family, and she saw that this work was not really, not just about changing healthcare nationally, but it was very much family to family, including her own family.
Thank you. We need a revolution in terms of how we evaluate recruitment and retention. And one of the ways that we start when we're looking at how to attract participants and funders is to provide them with information. And the information that we have to provide is that African American women are dying at rates that are greater than any other group of women in this country. We're the red, Caucasian women are the yellow, Hispanic women are the green, Native American women are the gray, and Asian Pacific Island women are the blue. And we're dying from preventable and premature illnesses. And we tell them, these aren't statistics. These are our mothers, our sisters, our aunts, and eventually us, but even more tragically, they are going to be our children if we don't do something about it. We also tell them that it's not just their physical health, but it's also their emotional health. That African American women have the highest rates of stress and depressive symptoms. And one of the things that was most distressing to me when I saw this slide from the CDC, because we think when you're 25 to 44, of course you're going to have a lot of stress because you're just getting started, you're trying to raise your families. But when I realized that our stress levels get even greater when we get in the middle ages, because now we're taking care of not just our children and spouses and partners and jobs, but also our grandparents. And that sometimes for some women, the only thing that is golden about these years is what you see on television. But we also give hope. We let them know that over 80% of all the cases of heart disease, diabetes, stroke, colon cancer, lung cancer, cervical cancer, and HIV/AIDS can be prevented or reduced. And we're finding that that's part of what you have to do when you're recruiting and you want to retain. You have to give information, but you also have to make it clear that that information can be changed in some ways, especially if it's negative. And so we developed our primetime sister circles. They're community-based. They are in churches and schools and libraries all around the country. They're education support groups of 25 African American women. They meet for 12 weeks, 2 hours a week, and the women are from 40 to 75. And they're based on an integration of 3 evidence-based theories. The program empowers women to prioritize their health because, as you know, we're so busy taking care of everybody else that, of course, we don't make our to-do list. But also to practice stress management, increase physical activity, and improve nutrition. And then we show them the impact of this change. So we do a baseline study and afterwards. We let them know what it is, and we also let our funders know what we've been doing. The pre is blue, the post is yellow. So you can see in terms of stress management, nutrition, exercise, the things we said we were going to impact on, we impact on. And now we've added another component, clinical data. So we're looking at blood pressure, weight, hypertension, and what we found in one of our studies is that the blue again is pre. Our women who come in with normal blood pressure, that number increases. Women who have hypertension who come in, that number goes down. The normal blood pressure increases, and one of the most important findings in terms of diabetes is that women who come in who are pre-diabetic, that means that if something is done, they're going to develop diabetes. And our programs, when they leave, that number has decreased. So what we found about recruiting and retaining that we hope will be of use to you is that first, you have to have participant input, not only in the design of your program, but also in the design of the evaluation. If people are going to trust you, they have to know that you have listened to them. Second, unlike what many people believe, our women love educational data when it's presented like this. And our population ranges from women who've never graduated from high school to women who are physicians and lawyers. But they need to know so that they can go out and be revolutionaries and share this information in their communities. Because it's not enough just to tell it to the people that you're working with. If it makes sense, you want it to go to the general population. It has to be culturally competent, and not just on the basis of race, but gender and age. And all too often, all women are lumped together, all blacks are lumped together, and age is not even thought about. It has to be holistic in terms of mind, body, and spirit, and it has to empower women. It has to make us believe that we can make a difference in our lives and the lives of other people and of our children, and it has to be motivational. I want to end this in our program. As I said, we have a curriculum, but we also use as part of the text, and our curriculum was developed by experts in conjunction with us so that, again, all of the women from third grade readers to readers who have mastered the most difficult text can use it. But to motivate, we end every recruitment session and the last meeting of the 12 weeks with this poem. The last chapter in our book is called Reaching the North Star, and this is a poem by Becky Bertha called Poem for Flight. There will come a day, it is not far off now, when you wake in the morning and know that you were meant to be happy and healthy, and that you wanted more than you want things or memories, any concrete place called home, all the strings of the past that fasten you. More than you want justice or pride, your old clay image of yourself, or the faint chance that all that has gone wrong may still change. It is you who hold the power to change, and whatever it is that holds you, whatever it is you think you cannot live without, the time has come to open your hands and let it go. Run, flee, disappear, break loose, take wing, fly by night, move like a meteor, be gone. If you fear it will never be possible, think of Harriet Tubman, who traveled alone the first time, who finally freed 300 people, but first had to free herself. There's a Harriet in all of us, and we must take the opportunity to finally free her. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Gail. And finally, Gordon Johnson founded the nonprofit Neighbor to Family to implement a new model of foster care, a system that is completely broken. It's now operating in five states, and in 2007 he won the Purpose Prize. And I asked Gordon if anything significant had happened in the past year. He said, well, I lost 80 pounds.
Thank you, but I think I put some more on last night and this morning. Well, first of all, I want to say I got 14 minutes, not 7, right? Right, laughed. Thank you, good afternoon. We're going to talk about children today, and I want you to stop and think what a child goes through when they come into the child welfare system. I want you to imagine that you're a young child, and you and your brother or sister are taken abruptly from your home by a social worker or a police officer. You have hurriedly packed some clothes into a black plastic garbage bag, and the only luggage you have is that bag. Arriving at the intake center, the social worker who gets on the phone after taking you for only a few minutes or talking to you only a few minutes can only find a foster home with 1 bed, not 3, and so you're separated from your siblings. And no one will tell you when you'll see them again. And you're also placed in a state-licensed foster parent, with a state-licensed foster parent in her home, who you don't know, bewildered and afraid, and you get into fights, and soon the foster parent doesn't want you there anymore. And you end up moving from home to home 15 times. Each time you meet a different social worker or a psychologist. You haven't heard from your mother or siblings, and you've been in 5 different schools. Your grades are poor, and you've been branded a troublemaker, and it's recorded. Now, as director of the Illinois Department of Children and Family Services from 1983 to 1990, I was the state-appointed official to protect and provide safe, and a stable environment for more than 50,000 abused and neglected children a year. I knew firsthand that nearly 2/3 of all the sibling groups in foster care are separated from at least some of their siblings. I knew it was a harmful practice, and it haunted me. But the state bureaucracy was in chaos with a high staff turnover and high caseloads. And not one of the 300 nonprofit agencies in the state was prepared to offer me any solutions to the sibling separation problem. So in 1998, I took matters into my own hands. And with my wife, Dolores, we moved to Florida, and we started a neighbor to family, private, nonprofit foster care agency for children with a radical approach that specifically selected foster parents to keep one sibling group in their home, and also that they must be highly trained with a salary and benefits like I get, making them the best equipped to deal with the needs and standards or demands for children in their care. And the foster parent is a team member with a social worker and attends family team meetings that include the birth parent. Sounds good so far, right? Well, what I learned from being an entrepreneur in this competitive and political environment, that is constant. And because the neighbor to family model continued to pose such a threat to the established child welfare system, I knew I had to prove that neighbor to family was good and really worked. And what I'll tell you next might apply no matter how close you are to your project or this project in your heart, but also that there's some things that I've learned through this that hopefully is helpful to you. I said it about providing or approving our approach by contacting two credible groups. One was the Florida Ounce of Prevention, and the other one was the University of Central Florida. And I asked them to conduct a formal research evaluation of our program. And then a few years later, the University of Georgia conducted a similar study for our emerging program in the statewide, in the state of Georgia, that showed that neighbor to family, one, sibling groups were returned to their parents in 8 months, compared to the state average of 23 months and a national average of 33 months. Parents learned new and effective ways of handling their children. Children academic status improved. Children remained in one placement. Foster parents had to notify us and get our approval if any other person was in their home, and foster parent turnover was 15% versus 65%. Biological parents took pride in their change and kept in touch with the foster parents, and also biological parents who did not change, children were placed with relatives or adopted. With proven outcomes, there was also the fact that the program has expanded to 5 states and now serves 6,000 children. Presenting cost savings to each state from the shortened length of stay and care, and also we provide 6 months of aftercare at no cost to the state, and showing each state how our approach meets the federal requirements, like teaching new ways for birth parents, holding family team meetings, less placement moves, and etc. And we require our foster parents to have to go through annual 50 hours of training, and now we're into this movement called evidence-based. And with evidence-based, we've been able to conduct performance evaluations by foster parents, present progress reports to funders, and have community events with hosts like sibling events and so forth. And we conduct regular surveys of the constituents of our communities, staff regarding quality service, and trained staff and approaches. So the whole key here is to stay focused and also to pay attention to yourself, mental and physical health, rest, take time off. I delegate, and I mentor promising staff members as much as I can, and I keep up on feedback from my organization, and also to try to keep this organization vibrant. Now, at Neighborhood Family, our kids will come in afraid, uncertain, garbage bags, as I said, but they will go home, and they will stay together, proud with a trunk, not a garbage bag, full of their belongings, decorated by themselves, and hopefully prove to themselves and the community that they mean something. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Gordon. You know, I'll start off with the first question for both you and Gail. Both of you have said you really need evidence and evidence-based approaches.
Hello?
Hello? Is that better? Okay, sir. So both Gordon and Gail, you've talked about how you really need to have an evidence-based approach if you want to move the systems. In your case, a system that doesn't prioritize keeping families and siblings together. In your case, a system that really doesn't look at these, in many cases, the social determinants of health is what you're really talking about. How do you marshal that data, and what kind of approaches, what advice do you have for people in the room who want to have those kinds of impact?
Well, one of the things that we found out early was, especially if you want to recruit, that having those red bars, as the women called them, is very, very powerful as a recruiting tool, but it's also very powerful as a way to retain women, because we do a at the end of the 12 weeks, we do a post, then 6 months later and a year later. When we present that information to the women and we let them know that, they are very eager to know this is going to help them, but it's also information that's going to be used to help their sisters. Also, recruiting minorities can be very difficult, but having, again, their input in how you design the evaluation, and obviously for funders, this is major, because even if they are not interested in research, they're interested in evaluation. And so I really want to encourage all of my sisters and brothers in this movement. You have to do research. And you have to publish it. We are now in the process of publishing our second article in the Journal of the National Medical Association. So it not only keeps your participants involved, it obviously helps with funding, and equally important, it shares information with the rest of the community about how to get minorities into, and other people, into research programs.
Thank you, Gail. We got to remember a couple of things that are happening now in social service. That the federal government, in fact, has a little definition saying that, you know, we're looking for agencies that meet promising practice, which is part of evidence-based, and also some of the states are moving that way. It's a good way of eliminating many agencies if you don't have proof that you're doing well. What we have done is similar to what Gail has done, but we've done real depth in research by having two cohort groups. One is a state group of 417 children, say in Georgia, compared to our 417 children in Georgia, same ages and locations and et cetera, over the 4 years. And we've had that evaluated, and that's where I got the statistics from. What I quoted from you is actually what is happening, is that we have been able to prove that our service has been effective and cost effective, and that children are not only faring out better, but families are, because we are emphasizing certain elements. And that's what we do. And next thing we're doing is moving towards the publication, which will be out in a couple of weeks, which is then get into promising practice, which is a level, and then you move on to actually becoming evidence-based. There's a list that they will have of agencies who make that, and you will not be able to compete for grants or some of the things in the state, but at least federal, without having that designation. So it's getting very, very serious. The dollars are getting very slim in this area, including where we have mandated service of child abuse and neglect. So you've got to be really at the cutting edge. And this is new for us in social service because we're not used to publishing anything. We don't want to get out front. You know, we're afraid of that. But now you have to really come out and really show that you mean business by equality.
And
I just
sorry.
wanted to add one thing, and that is I really want to underscore what was just said. We do have what we call comparison groups. We've had now over 1,000 women to go through our program, and we have done them in Illinois, Florida, Maryland, DC, but we always try to have these comparison groups because it really, again, it makes a difference, not just in terms of getting money from the federal government, but from these private funders. We've gotten funding now from Walmart, from Kellogg, from Ford Foundation, and various others. So whether they're looking for research or just evaluation, having the comparison groups help a tremendous amount.
Thank you. Gary, you and Joyce, you've both, your innovations have essentially been these massive collaborations across, in your case, 40 food banks, and in your case, thousands of community members, but also developing a process to bring that into other communities so you can teach people how to make those collaborations happen. You know, could you boil it down to a few specific examples of how that actually works?
Gary, you go ahead. I'm going to invite Nelson to respond.
You're going to have to say it again. Thank you. Just ask the question again.
Yeah, the question is, what's the secret to collaboration?
I touched on it a little bit, and it really comes down to self-interest. If whatever the program in our particular case is, we're offering fresh fruits and vegetables to a specific operation that can't take full trucks, they can only take a few pallets. The only way everybody can participate is by sharing. And so I saw that as a reason for people to participate. Eventually they all saw it. And now, as I mentioned, we started out where nobody could take a full truck of anything. And now we have food banks that take 15 truckloads a week. We still have operations, food banks, that still can only take 5 pallets, 10 pallets. And so they continue to share. So what we have is an organizations, 40 food banks, 5,000 plus nonprofits that receive the food from them, all sharing, and they're doing it because that's the only way they can get the product and keep it before it has to be dumped, because it's obviously a perishable product.
Nelson? You want me to repeat the question too?
No, I got it. In our case, people wanting to be involved where there's not a product, as in fruit or some other things, but it is actually a challenge to want to understand each other. And I think that requires a great deal of integrity and sincerity. People have to see it, people have to feel it, and they have to know that you stand for it and that you mean that. I think the greatest challenge, I was so impressed with Bob Moses weaving a compelling and yet troubling picture of the journey over which we've come and the degree to which the conflictual nature of our history is buried beneath the soil and we are not really aware of it. It's like it sank into the groundwater and we drink of that water and not know why we're sick. And part of truth-seeking, truth-telling, and healing is to nurture a process that allows us to face a community truth, a collective truth of our past, not with the view of hurting anybody or harming anybody, but understanding something about ourselves, that core of us that makes us humanity, and then to see all the rest of it, all of our differences and our diversity as an opportunity to celebrate that, rather than something over which we fight and conflict. And that's a difficult challenge. And I would say that that is the greatest challenge that humanity faces, and that's getting along with itself. What it does, and I'll conclude with this, is that all the other beautiful gifts that we have to offer each other are blocked by our inability to fully appreciate the other, because we grew out of a history of other-sizing people. And we want to really live beyond that into believing that we're a gift to each other and that our diversity is to be used and celebrated. And so we had to teach that, model that, live that, and gradually people believe it. But it's a journey.
Well, thanks so much. Jim told me that we're supposed to end at 3:10, so we've gone a few minutes over. We'll go a few more minutes, but I know you all have planes to catch. But you know, with that idea that really integrity is at the core of this, perhaps we could all wrap up with some reflection on and maybe I'll direct this to Gail initially. You know, you're essentially asking people to answer the question, why does my health matter? Okay, which is why do I matter, and that relates to what's in the soil. So how do you do that? That's behavior change vis-a-vis health is probably our #1 national health problem right now. How do you actually get people to answer that question successfully and release the Harriet? What does that look like? And then each of you, with respect to your work, what's the integrity and how does the integrity of your work play out in how you're actually able to be effective?
I think for us, it is the fact that we phrase it in a way that allows women, and they have to really feel that it's okay, because so often as women we feel guilty when we think we're taking care of ourselves. So the first thing that we have to do is phrase it in a way that makes it clear that by taking care of ourselves, we are then in a better position to take care of other people. And that, for many women, is the hook. When you make it clear that if you don't change, your daughters, your sons might wind up dying prematurely. The second point is by using our relationships with our partners, by talking to churches about partnering with us to have our community programs, by talking to health centers, so that we're not just doing this alone. We have the press that people have to be healthy and to take care, but we also have these community partnerships that make all the difference in the world. And by then using what we've learned over the years about the love that we think most people have for themselves and that they have for others, and the desire to be healthy human beings.
What I found is that it's important to bring into the scope of the officials of the state the importance of keeping siblings together, which is one of their major problems. And they will recognize that because there's no program that they have designed and use these states that have that just takes siblings. And also the fact that the federal government is mandating them to keep children together. So if they don't want to have a lawsuit, which the Washington state has now a huge lawsuit against them, they must keep siblings together. And that's happening all over the country now. So it puts us in a position to come with some solutions. And right now, we're the only agency in the entire United States that's designed just specifically to keep siblings together. So you just have to continue to bring that up to the forefront of all the state officials. I only work with the governors or commissioners because they're the decision makers, and they're the ones that are held accountable, like I was when I was running the state of Illinois, for meeting the mandates of the federal government. And so it was easier to talk to them to get some of these programs implemented. Only one more thing I want to say is that when I mentioned radical, it is radical, and we are a threat to the established agencies. And I know that, and the purpose for us is to raise the mission to the point that we change the child welfare system by proving that things are effective, and if you keep parents involved and hopefully accountable, they'll take care of their children. If they can't, then that's the time to remove them. I, as official of the state of Illinois, took responsibility from taking children from families and almost guaranteeing to them, supposedly, that I'm going to protect them better than they did. And many times I could not do it. That's what drove me. And that thing is one of the things that most of us who sit in this situation in a hot seat will remember, is that we are charged with protection, and we cannot guarantee it because of all the interest groups and elements out there that are not following along the mandate like we are.
Let me say first that there are some just 2-page flyers here to give you a better sense of what we're doing in the beloved community, including the truth process. You can pick up one as you leave. But to try to answer this question, I think a key thing first is to believe that you must and can do something to make a difference, and to convey that to your family, your friends, those who think they're your enemies. You may think that they're your enemies. And to be prepared to take the risk, make yourself vulnerable, so that you can take on whatever is required to change an entire community. That's what we're trying to do, is really change an entire way of thinking, change institutions that have been the cause of oppression, whether it's about those of color, those who are women, those who are of different sexual preferences, religious groupings, whatever. And so this is a little significant incident 31 years ago has led us into this path where we see some possibility in Greensboro. And people are hungry for that. We've been amazed at how folks really want to, how did you do that with no money, no nothing? And what we had was the hope and the willingness to really commit ourselves. As Nelson said, the integrity to be honest about mistakes we've made. And that takes confidence that together, that each town, each country, the world has what it needs if we would break down those barriers that divide us unnecessarily and realize that we can really, by reaching out to each other in our humanness, really solve it. I believe that for a long time. I'm almost 64 now, so I believe it. And I hope I never stop believing, and I hope that I convey that. And if we don't, there is no future for our children. I really loved what Catherine Bateson had to say. And I'm doing what I can to make a future for our 4 grandchildren, and I hope that you're doing the same thing.
Thanks. You want to wrap up with the last point, Gary?
Well, I'm just going to say that the people we serve are the most vulnerable, and thank goodness Michelle Obama's involved with the whole idea of food deserts and bringing attention to the whole idea of nutritional food for people in need. And when I started in food banking, it was all boxes and cans, close to co-product. And now we've got a situation in California, we're trying to get it to the rest of the country, where 50% of everything food banks are distributing is fresh fruits and vegetables. And that makes for a very hopeful future.
Well, thanks very much. Well, thank you all for, yeah. Yeah. Okay, last point. Right.
But I think it's an important point. Dr. Gadsden, I love part of the Primetime Sister Circles. And getting back to your previous question and the comments you made, the issue of replicability, you know, those of us that are Purpose Prize winners, we're at a point, I think there's a natural history that once we become more visible and once we grow in our community, the natural thing is to try to take it to scale. First of all, we started getting a lot of requests from communities that kind of forced us to move out of our communities. But now we're at a point where we want to take it national, just how what you're talking about. So we're having to develop a process of how to replicate and really have it in a specific way so that we can do it, even though communities are different, that there are just some basic things that we know we have to do to try to replicate it. And so I would just recommend to all of us that we really focus on our replicability, and there's no question that is coming. If you're not facing it now, you will be, and that we do something about it. And maybe even as a group, I mentioned to Jim Emmerman a little earlier that one of the things I hope we can do, you know, we have a lot of models that other people do, and many of them are isolated, and they start recreating the wheel. If we could make available our resources to them somehow on our blogs, whatever, so that someone could look at our data set and say, well, wait a minute, let me contact these folks so that I'm not trying to start from scratch. We could save new programs, money, time, effort, and everything else. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much. Well, just to quickly wrap up, we have some real practical insights here about the uses of data, how putting data into the hands of the people that you're working with, and not just using it, for papers and so forth. Really working with communities and connecting through integrity, helping organizations understand their self-interest and how those can be aligned, and also helping in terms of behavior change, people understand that the message is you're really important, but sometimes people need to hear you're really important because somebody else is really important in order to recognize their importance. So thanks very much. Let's have a hand for everybody here.